X-Men. Get it!
Hey everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Battle of the Atom. This is, of course, the podcast you get inside your earbuds every single Monday, where I, Zach Jenkins, and my co-host Adam Reck look at every single X-Men story that's ever existed in this and all other multiverses. And we distill. The answer is there. We just find it. For the best, the worst, and everything in between X-Men stories ever. Adam, how are you doing today on this journey to discover where things are in the world of X-Men?
I am great, Zach. Thanks for having me back on episode whatever we're on right now. And
26?
I'm excited that is that where we're at?
We're
doing
26.
Pretty good. We're kind of like halfway through a year, you know?
Which is bananas. I cannot believe that's a real thing.
We just keep recording, so it's working out. I'm just excited because what we're going to do today is talk about the stories that Kelly Thompson recommended when we interviewed her. So these are some pretty cool things to talk about.
Yeah, it's a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, I just saw Chris Anka released the latest. I think it's number 4, the cover, where they're wearing each other's outfits.
Yeah, it's adorable, and I love it.
It's great. Absolutely amazing.
Love it.
I'm very much looking forward to it. So what are we starting off with here, Zach?
We are going to start off with what we have tried to figure out to call off mic, and we've decided on one of two things, either Savage Land Rogue and also some space stuff, or just everything around Uncanny X-Men 275.
Yeah.
Which is neither of those are good titles. Those are bad. And there's no reason why Marvel did not use them on the covers of these comic books.
Well, it is kind of hard to sum this up. Like the very first thing that I thought as I was going back through these is, wow, there is a lot going on in these issues.
Yep.
We're still wrapping up post Siege Perilous Aussie X-Men here. And we've got the Savage Land stuff. We've got the outer space stuff. There's some backgrounds, pre-Muir Island Saga Shadow King things happening here. So, it's a lot packed into these issues.
Writer Chris Claremont and primary artist Jim Lee do a lot in these 5 issues. This is covering Uncanny X-Men 273, so right after the end of Extinction Agenda, to 277, which is right before the Muir Island saga.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting, I think Kelly mentioned 269. If you guys want to get, little extra Savage Land Rogue in there, that's another good issue to hit. But that it gets broken up by Extinction Agenda, as she noted. So it's not really, consistent.
That's Rogue there. Fighting Carol Danvers for control of her body, or the ghost of Carol from her body. Yes. Also, and then that beautiful splash page of Magneto at the end. That's the only thing I remember from that comic. Yeah. Rogue gets her clothes ripped off, which, okay, that happens. And Magneto shows up at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. And they have like this weird sort of chemistry, which seems very odd to me. Given like Magneto's unclear age and Rogue's unclear age, and anyway.
Let me ask, have you ever been a fan of the Rogue Magneto pairing? I know it has fans.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I think it works best in Age of Apocalypse, which we'll also talk about in a couple of minutes. But, it's fine. And it's more of a will they, won't they, like even Magneto is acknowledging like, am I feeling something? Am I not feeling something? So, hey, it's there. And I think it's kept as subtext a little bit. So that's fine.
Yeah.
I think why I remember these issues so much is because of the artwork.
Mm-hmm.
The storylines are great. You've got, Kazar, and you've got the Starjammers, you've got, Gladiator and Co. And, it's I think I typed in my notes like double splash page glory, because there's all of these, you know, amazing double page, and the 275 has this beautiful trifold, you know, pull out cover. I mean, Jim Lee is firing on all cylinders here. It's a really beautiful, beautiful artwork.
This is peak Jim Lee. I think this book looks, or these 5 issues all look very, very good. And we should note that 275 is actually a jam art issue with Jim Lee, Will Sparticio, Klaus Jensen, John Byrne, Rick Leonardi, Mark Silvestri, Michael Golden, and Larry Stroman all contributing something to it.
Yeah, that's 273, I think, is the jam issue, right? And like, wow, it's a weird one. You know, like the artwork changes so much from page to page. Wraps up with Stroman at the end. I mean, it's an oddball thing to introduce this arc with. But once Jim Lee is doing all of it, and Scott Williams, it's there's
good. A
good.
reason why Jim Lee was very popular. One of the reasons, and this is something that is a weird nitpick thing of X-Men fandom. I think Savage Land Bikini Rogue has done more damage than good in this world. I think
it has not aged well.
No, and I think it would be fine if it didn't turn into people posting pictures of cosplayers wearing it. And look, if you're a cosplayer and you want to cosplay as Savage Land Rogue, more power to you. If you are an internet commentator and you see someone cosplaying Savage Land Rogue, act like an adult and not a creepy person. I feel like that should be reasonable, but I know I've seen this too many times. It's like Slave Leia in Star Wars. I get it. I've been 15 before, but let's have some awareness in the year of our Lord 2018.
Yeah, and I'll give, you know, a little bit more leeway than Slave Leia. You know what I mean? Like Slave Leia has no agency whatsoever. This is Rogue in Savage Land. You know, obviously it's a warm jungle climate with dinosaurs. However, you know, clearly there are aspects of this run that are very much being drawn. Jim Lee's young, you know, he knows he's got the horny teen market out there. So we get these scenes of like Psylocke bathing nude for some reason. Spaceship,
and the,
you know,
the weird
nudity,
part where they're just in they're in the showers of the Xavier Institute basement.
Well, it actually happens twice. I think, you know, there's that thing in 273 where everybody's just in the showers. And then there's another scene later on where she's also, you know, in shadow. But, you know, I think part of why people liked Jim Lee was not just like the big muscles and the action, but was also, you know, this idea of, you know, these idealized sexy female bodies. And, you know, lots of people have aped this style. And I think we talked about this when we talked about Mutant Genesis, that this style influences a whole decade worth of artwork, and nobody does it like him. So
Jim Lee as an artist holds up. He draws a lot of really cool stuff. And I do think it's very obvious that we are talking about Jim Lee's art in these issues. No, because they both kind of suck. Zaladain's nothing. Like the Savage Land arc is Zaladain's going to take over the world with some spires and magnet powers, and Magneto and Rogue and Nick Fury team up to stop her. And there's good moments in that arc, like the moment where Magneto executes Zaladain is very well done. And even though Claremont didn't really want, I don't think, the whole heel turn of Magneto again, it's done very well here. Like you can understand that this isn't gone crazy running Genosha Magneto. This is, I'm the same character I always was. I have a strong purpose, a strong core, but I am going to murder this woman. That's something that's going to happen.
Yeah. And if Mutant Genesis came immediately after this arc, you probably wouldn't bat an eye. You know, you could probably skip Muir Island and it wouldn't really be a big deal. Because this really does set up the vision of what the next step of X-Men is going to look like and what it's going to be. So it's definitely good. It's fun. It's sort of like Mutant Genesis Draft 1. and
It is. I
definitely
do
worth
want to say,
checking
because
out.
we've only talked about half the storyline, the reason we haven't talked about any of the stuff with the Shi'ar and the scrolls and the space stuff is because it's really poorly done and completely unmemorable and just boring as all get out, even though Jubilee is consistently delightful.
She's great. She's great. And we'll talk a little bit more about her in a second with the second.
Wait, hold on. Because you, Adam, you write a
Yeah, go
fan
ahead.
comic about Jubilee, correct?
I do. Yes.
Did you know a lot of X-Men fans just hate Jubilee for no good reason?
You know, I was a little bit concerned because last year for the Women's March, I drew a piece of Jubilee holding up a protest sign, and the protest sign says, all the best X-Men are women. And, you know, last year it got a lot of reposts on Tumblr. Great, whatever. You know, not a lot of people look at my work. And so I'm excited when people do. And then this year it kind of took a life of its own again. And because, you know, there were new marches. Thank you for marching. Anybody that marched. But it popped up on a Reddit page. And I just, you know, out of curiosity, I stumbled onto it and I'm looking through the comments and people are like really trash talking Jubilee. And I am mortified because I find Jubilee to be so much fun. She's going to factor into a lot of why I really liked part of what we're going to talk about next. And she's great here. You know, she gets to combo with a couple of different characters and have some new dynamics instead of just being with the Madripoor trio. So, yes, I am surprised by that.
If you don't like Jubilee, you need to read more early 90s X-Men and also Generation X and also the new Generation X and kind of most things she's been in. Jubilee's really good.
Yeah. Even her appearances in the Wolverine solo series are really fun. So, you know, I think she's a blast. I just want to double back real quick because I know we want to rank this and go on, but you know, you were talking about what's memorable about this and why are we concentrating so much on the art. I distinctly remember picking up, I think it was on vacation or something like that. I remember picking up a coloring book that was filled with the artwork from this arc. And it was all of the black and white artwork. And that
Really?
I think is indelible. That's what sticks in my mind. It's not the story. It's not whatever Claremont's trying to mash into this couple of issues. It's the artwork. So
are you sure you didn't just buy a Marvel Essential and start coloring in it?
Wow. I don't think they were making those back then, but you know, there was a lot of X-Men merchandise in the early 90s. You know, I'm looking right now at my copy of the X-Men Visionaries Jim Lee paperback, trade paperback. And I distinctly remember having a t-shirt with this image on it. I'm sure it was bootleg, who knows, but like there was so much stuff you could buy at that time because of the animated series.
Well, now I need to know what the X-Men Visionaries Jim Lee paperback looks like.
Oh,
because
cool. It has all the early stuff before you hit Mutant Genesis, including his classic X-Men backup story. So,
okay, I don't know where I've seen this image. I've seen it 1,000 times, though I think the one on Amazon might be recolored.
It's definitely recolored on the cover, yeah.
Yeah, it's blue team charging.
Yeah.
Look it up. You have a smart device around you. And check it out if you want to see it. Anyway, where do we want to rank this? And I think this is probably better than Fatal Attractions, but I don't think it's that much better than Fatal Attractions.
Yeah, no, we're going higher than that. I'm looking more.
Is it better than Men?
I would put this. I think this is because the Dracula issue seems to be a level for me of late. Do you like this? I think I like this better than Men. Men is sort of like a fun, you know, silly thing. This is pretty memorable, at least artistically.
It's got good Jim Lee art, but I can tell you, when I, like everyone else who gets into X-Men, did my Claremont run.
Yeah.
I'm going to go through Claremont. I got to this arc and I was like, I'm ready to be done now.
Yeah, you can kind of tell that he's wrapping it up. And especially by the time you get to Muir Island, you're like, oh boy. All right. So
yeah, Muir Island's arc is bad.
But I think that's a good place on the list is maybe around, you know, Men or Mojo World. So do you
I got more joy out of Mojo World.
Okay.
But I will not disagree that the Jim Lee art in this is much stronger.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like we're stuck because we're like really impressed artistically, but not story wise. And I don't want to deliberate too much. So do we just want to put it at 44? Is this better than Men?
Sure, we'll put it right there. We will put it at the new number 44 above men. This is the stuff around Uncanny X-Men 275.
Yeah, that's a good way of classifying it. Now, this next one, I think we probably should get into Age of Apocalypse because
we have to. 26 episodes in, and we're going to touch Age of Apocalypse. And by the way, anyone who wants to request stuff, you're not requesting the entirety of Age of Apocalypse. I don't have time to reread 40 plus issues of a comic I really enjoy. So we are ranking Gambit and the X-Ternals right now. Adam, what was that? Adam, what was that guttural noise you just made when I talked about the beauty that was Age of Apocalypse?
All right. So for a very, very long time, the only part of Age of Apocalypse that I invested my energy into was Lobdell and Bacalo's Generation Next. I had already,
which is the best part.
Yeah, it is. It's the standout of the entire thing. But and when I delved into the other parts of it, I was like, well, none of this is nearly as good as that mini, at least this is just my take. And so, for y'all who want to recommend other parts of Age of Apocalypse, I have read huge chunks of it at this point, and I gotta say, I still find myself, there are so many cool concepts in it. There are so many cool character designs, but just as a, this thing, I find it very hard to get behind. And I think mainly it has to do with aesthetics, because this is where, I've been on record as like being cool about Executioner's Song, but like when we get into AoA, we're talking about a very different artistic approach that starts to come in. We're starting to see a little bit more of an anime influence in the art, and we're starting to see this mix of like third generation Jim Lee and Liefeld knockoffs, and yet also we're seeing like, the Matsuda type stuff that we're going to see go into the main series. So, all right. That was a long-winded way of saying I'm not a huge fan of Age of Apocalypse. So please bring on the rancor and the anger.
Right. I'm just going to say the way I read Age of Apocalypse was I hunted down every single back issue in floppies, and I collected them all and then found the reading order online and read them all in floppies. And I think it's a delightful thing. And anyone who disagrees is missing the joy of Age of Apocalypse. And one of those joys is Gambit in the X-Ternals. Yes. And we're just going to, we're not going to argue about the merits of Age of Apocalypse till we rank it yet. Gambit in the X-Ternals. Well, actually, one last note on Age of Apocalypse. For people who don't know, do you remember a couple years ago when Marvel canceled all of their books and put them all as miniseries in Secret Wars?
Yeah.
Yeah, they did that in 1994 with the X-Men, only all of the books like made sense and connected really tightly into this big, very well done alternate reality. So what was it? Generation X became Generation Next. Mm-hmm. Excalibur became X with an Excalibur. Couple other things, but X-Force became Gambit and the X-Ternals, which was such a cool lineup. So this team, Adam, do you know who's on this team? Do you know who the Gambit and his X-Ternals are?
I absolutely love this lineup. So let me see if I can remember them all off the top of my head. It's Gambit, Lila Cheney, Jubilee, Strong Guy, a really radical version of Sunspot, who seems very powered up. Who am I missing? Yep. Is that?
Richter is the antagonist.
Yes, Richter.
Julio Esteban Richter.
Yeah, Richter's rocking one of those great AoA face tattoos, and for some reason he's got these beautiful little ribbons wrapped around his hands for some reason. It's sort of like
that's just Age of Apocalypse.
Yeah, throwaway character design. And then I believe they're also antagonized by the Magi, which is a great AoA concept for Jamie Madrox as like this weird religious cult.
It's a cult of one guy.
I love it.
That's
so great.
Kind of great. Yeah. Anyway, Gambit and the X-Ternals, like we said, came out of X-Force. So it was written by Fabian Nicieza, with pencils by then artist Tony Daniel for the first 2 issues, and Salvador La Roca for the last 2 issues.
Yeah,
I I know Kelly, when she was mentioning this series, said she wasn't so hot on the artist in it. I think Tony Daniel's pretty good. I think Salvador Larroca is pretty good. Like, I think the art is fine here, though it's not the best art in Age of Apocalypse.
No, I'm just reading through it is difficult because not only does the art shift, but the tone shifts very dramatically between the first two issues and the second two issues. The first two issues are like a really fun, kind of jokey heist book.
It's a heist,
right? Yeah. We've got Magneto. He's going to sneak us into Peter Corbeau's secret library where we're going to reveal Lila Cheney's powers to shoot us off into space so we can steal the Macron crystal. And then we've got and Richter's on our heels. What a fun concept. Jubilee, I mentioned this before. She is like jokey out the yin yang, and Tony Daniels' art really works with the tone of that story. The second you get into the second two issues, LaRocca is going for a more realistic and maybe a more like image style. It works, especially with, he's drawing these beautiful spaceships and, these battle scenes, but I don't feel like he's as good a visual storyteller. And the cartooniness of the first half, which kind of contributes to the fun of it, also then switches the tone of the book, which leads to Strong Guy's betrayal. And then we get into, this is my major complaint with AoA is that a lot of it is a downer. I know it's supposed to be, but it weighs on me. It's like watching too much Black Mirror. Black Mirror is great once in a while, but if you watch too much of it, it's just going to make you like mad and depressed. And like AoA kind of does that to me. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
I would just say one thing on AoA. Like I get that. I really do. What I think they did well is if you read Age of Apocalypse as an event, not as miniseries like we're doing.
Yeah.
And like you've done, but if you go through and say, okay, what week did what book come out and keep going through it, it is paced really well. And it's still it's a dark, gritty alternate future, but you get the wins and the losses in like good measure.
Sure.
So even if Gambit in the X-Ternals is down, Amazing X-Men might have had a win and things like that. Right. So it does well from that standpoint, but I think I really agree. The second half of this book goes a little off the rails. It doesn't help that there's like 2 pages of either Astonishing or Amazing X-Men that you should really read before you read the 4th issue of this. It skips over some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fun. Like I like it. This isn't my favorite AoA book, but especially those first 2 issues are a lot of fun. I love the Age of Apocalypse aesthetic. It's 90s is all get out, but in like it's knowingly extreme.
Yeah.
Like people can look at some of this stuff as a joke, but Fabian Nicieza was in on the joke.
Oh, clearly.
He was aware of what he was doing.
Yeah. And this really makes me wish that he had gotten an opportunity to write Jubilee more often, or even Gambit, or like this cast is great. And when he gets their voices right, it's really fun. So I understand why Kelly recommended it. Where would you rank this?
So where would I rank Gambit in the X-Ternals? I like it better than the stuff around 275.
Okay.
I definitely like that. I don't like it as much as Ultimate X-Men Volume 1.
Yeah.
Or Ladies' Night.
Mm-mm.
Probably not more than Gifts. I don't like it better than Inferno Exterminators.
Yeah, I
like it better than the Unis issue, though, I think.
Okay. I'm fine with that.
And that's what I think. And I've actually been doing a reread of Silver Age X-Men.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Unis issue is probably as good as most of Silver Age X-Men is going to get on this list.
Yeah, guys, if you have not been following Xavier Files on Twitter and seeing Zach's reactions as he hits these Silver Age things, they're very, very funny. So definitely check those out. All right. So are we saying this is number 37?
How do you feel about it compared to House of M? I get the feeling you like House of M better.
I mean, I really don't think that this is as good as even, I don't know, man. Like I'm okay with putting it ahead of Battle of the Atom, but I'm not even sure this is better than the holiday special story, with Santa as the movie.
That's
Or I find it difficult to put this ahead of like Claremont John Byrne Christmas Demon story, gifts.
I think I can live with that. Just right below Unis.
Okay.
That's X-Men number 8, the one with Unis the Untouchable.
All right.
This could be the new 38,
All right,
Gambit and the X-Ternals.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got one last story today. And if you listen to our episode of Kelly Thompson, you already know. So I don't know why this is being a big deal. This is Astonishing X-Men 1 through 6, Gifted.
Yeah.
Not to be related with the TV show that Adam now really, really likes.
I love it. And folks, if you have not watched the entire first season of Gifted, please find some time. If you've got it saved on your DVR, cool. Fast forward through the commercials. If you've got other means of binge watching it, like commercial free is the best way to go, and just go through it. Because if you were like me and you only watched like the first 2 or 3 episodes and you're like, it gets really good. And I kind of elaborated on this online. I know not everybody's going to agree with how much I love this show, but even if you just like X-Men, it does a lot of things right. So definitely check it out. But that is not what we're talking about.
No, we're not talking about that show whose finale I still haven't gotten around to watching.
Oh, it's great. You got to check it out.
It's like 2 hours long, though, and I have a kid, and me and my wife watch it together. So
okay. Yeah, you got
we have to find a chunk of time to watch a 2-hour episode.
I will tell you what television show I used to watch religiously, high school into college, was Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And it is so much fun to see Joss Whedon take on the X-Men here with this series. I know you hold this in very high esteem. So do you want to get into why you love Astonishing X-Men?
Astonishing X-Men by Joss Whedon and John Cassaday is one of the most pitch perfect X-Men stories ever. Mm-hmm. Especially these first 6 issues, because this is as good as that run gets. Like, everything else after is still high quality. It's still better than most X-Men stories. These first 6 issues are perfect. It is Kitty Pryde coming back to the Xavier Institute. It is amazing character dynamics. Kitty and Wolverine is great. Kitty and Emma is just amazing. Mm-hmm. Emma and Scott is great. Scott and Beast is great. Beast and Emma have a great dynamic, and that's not even considering the fact that Colossus gets resurrected in one of the best friggin' scenes.
Oh man, that reveal is hands down one of the best comic book scenes that has ever been done. It's just so smart and so quiet. I mean, there's something very cinematic, and we, people throw that word around as if like comic books need to live up to movies, or vice versa, that movies need to live up to comic. They're separate mediums, and there are things that comic books can do that films can't. And I'm convinced that if you tried to film that scene, I don't think it would have the power that those pages have. I just reread it last night. It gives me chills. I'm getting chills just thinking about that scene.
I mean, do you know how many perfect moments are in these 6 issues? How so many amazing moments?
Yeah.
Kitty being shocked that Emma teaches ethics. It's perfect.
Oh, man.
There's so much I can't even talk about. Colossus's I am made of rage attack on Ord, the freaking fastball special double page spread, the costumes double page spread. This is amazing. So I hold, and we've talked about this before, but I hold Grant Morrison's New X-Men as one of the best runs of comics, period. Mm-hmm. And I think that as a entirety, as a chunk of comic, I like New X-Men better than Astonishing X-Men. But I think in terms of moments, in terms of impact, in terms of memorability, Astonishing X-Men is in a class of its own. I mean, John Cassaday's art is gobsmackingly gorgeous.
Well,
and Whedon, he's very good at quippy dialogue and good at heartfelt character moments. I mean, like you say you watched Buffy for years. I mean, Whedon's admitted, oh, Buffy was just me doing Kitty Pryde.
Kitty Pryde. Yeah.
And now he got a chance to do Kitty Pryde.
Yeah. And he does it very, very well. You were just mentioning Cassidy's art, and I, sort of waxing on about the Colossus scene, but we were just talking earlier about these Jim Lee fight scenes, and the action. If you actually look at Jim Lee's fight scenes, let's take some of the stuff from Extinction Agenda or what we just talked about. It's more a lot of poses. It's characters that are sort of in relation to each other. If you look at there are a couple of very intimate fight scenes, very close quarters things that happen either between the X-Men or X-Men and, the people that they meet in the facility. They're fights. You can see how the characters are physically responding to each other, how they've physically interacted with each other. And they're very masterful ways of showing off the action in the scene. It's just really, really well done. And we've talked about this before, but we have to commend the publisher for allowing them to take the time. One of the things that we've mentioned before about New X-Men is that it does suffer because Quitely is not the artist on every issue. This doesn't.
And Igor Corday had to freaking draw an entire issue's worth of comics in like a weekend.
Yeah. It's so I think this is great. I mean, there's a reason that Last Stand went to this as its source material, despite,
it went to it 2 years later. Essentially, this thing got published, and the writers of X-Men: The Last Stand read it and said, "Oh, this is our next movie. Right. We're going to do Dark Phoenix Saga, and we're going to do this too." And that didn't go over super well.
Yeah, that's a terrible movie.
But their heart was in the right place because this is very good. Like you talk about cinematic. I'll tell you the way I experienced this comic and this run of comics first. The first way I experienced this wasn't in a comic. It was in the Marvel motion comics that they did.
Yeah.
It was on Hulu right when Hulu came out.
Huh.
And I was like, I like X-Men just as a casual person. And this is 2009, so I'm going to go watch this. And I did. And I said, oh, dang, yo, this is super good.
Yeah.
And it gives me chills. It's amazing. And you say cinematic, and motion comics suffer because you're trying to translate a static medium into a fluid one, and that doesn't work well. It just kind of looks like you're shifting things a bit. But the panel layouts, the pacing in this, I mean, John Cassaday is essentially drawing storyboards.
Yeah, sure.
That's exactly what he's doing here. That may sound like an insult, and that's not intended to be. He's drawing the action, the flow of motion. He's bringing your eye across everything exactly where you need it to be. It's just amazing how this thing works together. This is a comic I absolutely adore, and it gets a lot of praise for good reason. This is going back to basics done right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Solid cast, really tight story. I think that the general premise of the entire series with Breakworld is a really smart one, and it's unique, and it makes it sort of be this interesting standalone piece, and it's just really well done. The Beast stuff here, where he has to challenge himself to think about whether he's going to use the cure. Which I don't know that we even mentioned that is what this plot line is about, is that
look, people've read this, right?
Right? Yeah, I don't know.
If you haven't read the first 6 issues of Astonishing X-Men,
you should. If you haven't,
how are you listening to an X-Men podcast about random issues where we talked about Age of Apocalypse for 10 minutes?
You make an excellent point.
No, you've read this, right? If you haven't read this, at me. Get on me at Twitter, say, actually, Zach, I haven't read this. And then I'll say, okay, cool. It's very cheap on Comixology. Go buy it, please.
Yeah. Yeah. If you haven't,
or buy Marvel Unlimited.
Now you know what you're doing at some point within the next 24 hours, because it's definitely it's a must.
It's a breezy read too. Like, you're not going to be sitting there clunking through dialogue. There's not a friggin' piece of inch of this page wasted. It's so good. Where do we want to rank it, Adam?
All right. So how good is it? I mean, this is definitely, I think, worthy of maybe top 5 status. So what do we like this better than? At a top of our top 5 right now are Days of Future Past, God Loves, Man Kills, The Asgardian Wars, the first Wolverine mini, and Riot at Xavier's. I'm assuming you're thinking up here.
It's above Riot. Okay. I love Riot. Riot is the best part of Morrison's run, but in a very similar way that the best part of Brubaker's Daredevil run is better than the best part of Bendis's Daredevil run, even though Bendis's is a better run overall. Mm-hmm. Devil and So Black D is very good, guys. Yeah. Gifted is better than New X-Men Riot at Xavier's. It's similar in terms of like pacing in cinematography to Wolverine's first miniseries, the Claremont Miller one, which I just revisited recently. It holds up. I think that it's better than that. Adam, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so it's better than the Wolverine mini.
I think so, but
because I know you
are
such a huge,
yes,
Wolverine mini lover.
I am. This is better.
Okay. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
No shade, Frank Miller. This is better.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I guess where I struggle is whether it jumps into the top 3 or not. I'm on record as saying that I think Asgardian Wars is my favorite of all time, but just playing devil's advocate against myself, this is, if you wanted to introduce X-Men to someone, and that's one of the things we talked about with God Loves, Man Kills, you would probably hand them this way before you would hand them Asgardian Wars. And I don't know that necessarily makes it better, but it is a distilled version of X-Men that is so pure that, it really does make it a stone cold classic. So do you think that it deserves to, I don't know that it needs to jump. I don't think it jumps either Days of Future Past or God Loves, Man Kills. Do you? I mean, the question is,
here's what I would say, Adam.
Yeah.
I would say that God Loves, Man Kills is written for a new reader. It really is. It was a Marvel graphic novel first. Mm-hmm. It's for anyone to pick up.
Yeah.
Asgardian War is for the veteran. It's for you love X-Men, then you're going to love every last bit of this.
Yep.
Astonishing X-Men Gifted is for both. Astonishing X-Men walks the line so well of being a satisfying follow-up to Morrison's New X-Men with deep continuity things that fans are going to adore while still being the most accessible story, period. I think it's better than God Loves, Man Kills. I think it's better than Days of Future Past. Okay, wow. I'm just going to say it. I'm going to say it. But that's where I think this is. I think this might be the best X-Men story ever written, but this is not just mine to decide.
My only hesitation here is, I don't disagree. It's amazing and it's a really beautiful piece of work. You don't have, this doesn't exist without the foundation that Claremont lays.
Agreed.
None of the emotional resonance of any of this exists even a bit if you don't have it. Like the first couple pages of this, as Kitty walks in, are callbacks to Claremont stories. There's a callback to The Gift. There's a callback to Professor Xavier as a jerk. And, if you don't have those touchstones in place before you read Astonished, it doesn't have the same weight. You'll still read it and go, wow, this is amazing. But you do need to have read, chunks of Claremont to get that. So that's my hesitation.
I would actually completely disagree with that.
Okay.
Just one, in the same way that when you said Asgardian War when I said Asgardian War wasn't accessible, and you said, well, it was accessible enough for me to be the first story.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I didn't know what those callbacks were when I had first watched this, because I watched it first, which is so weird. But I knew they meant something, and they know it meant that someone was coming home.
So you read this before you read your Claremont run?
Before I read that deep into Claremont run, I had, when I was a kid, I had the first 3 essential X-Men Black and Whites, which got right before the Brood Saga.
Okay.
I think is where the cutoff was. So I was aware that Kitty was a character. I didn't have any of those touch points of Professor Xavier's a jerk or her getting kissy with Colossus, or at least I didn't remember because I hadn't read it in probably 10 years. We are splitting hairs. We're trying to figure out how good this is because it's very good.
Yeah,
this is tough. I'm
really
fine
tough.
with not putting it at number 1 because I don't think you want to put it above Days of Future Past. I'm gonna advocate for number 2. I think this is, if you're going accessible to accessible, everything the X-Men is about versus everything the X-Men is about, I think Gifted just squeezes out over God Loves Man Kills.
All right, I'm in complete agreement. Let's do that. This is our new number 2.
Our new number 2, an amazing showing on this list, an astonishing showing, some might say.
Deserved showing.
Astonishing X-Men 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, Gifted. And that will do it. That's going to wrap us up today. So glad you guys could join us. If you liked what you heard on this podcast, you can go over to patreon.com/XavierFiles and you can pitch in money just like some of our great patrons. We had a actually big outpouring this last week. We had like 5 guys and ladies, people submit, the bids to Patreon, and they were all at least at the $2 level to get an episode based on a story that they chose, which is super cool. So thank you to all of you guys. We now have a very long reading list to get through.
Yeah, thanks.
Which is a lot of fun. If you can't support monetarily, I totally get it. I can't support everything. Just thanks for listening. If you want to leave a review on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, whatever you use to get your podcasts, that helps. That's always nice. If you like my personal social media brand and all of that stuff, you can go over to XavierFiles.com where I have weekly articles about different X-Men stuff and things. This week's was Wolverine, which took 105 articles. There were 104 X-Men that people were more interested in reading about than Wolverine. That's bananas to me.
Sure, why not?
Also, Xavier Files on Twitter. Adam, where can people find you and all your stuff?
All right, guys, I've got new pages of the search for Bish and Jubes at adamrec.tumblr.com. I've got a new page coming out every Monday. And you can always follow me at Arthur Stacy. So that's where I'm at.
That does it. Man, that was very aggressive. I'm sorry. It does it. It's good.
That does it. Go to your room.
That does it. This is awful. I couldn't get my thing at number 1, even though I really liked it.
This podcast is over.
This podcast is over. I hope you survived the experience.
Get it!